Welcome to the Syneos Health Podcast, Conversations on Commercialization. I'm Tyler Cowan, Vice President Commercial at Syneos Health. In this series, my co-hosts and I are having discussions on how biopharma leaders are rewriting the commercial playbook and what it takes to succeed as commercialization takes on a more strategic role earlier in product lifecycle. We're sharing cross-functional perspectives on the decisions shaping commercialization today, from value and access to evidence, stakeholder strategy, and engagement planning. Enjoy this episode. We're glad you're here.
Hello and welcome to the Syneos Health Podcast, Conversations on Commercialization. I'm Michael Sarshad, Managing Director at Syneos Health Consulting, and your host for today's episode. I'm joined by David Williams, CEO of CCO Conversations, and Deanne, Melloy, Chief Commercialization Officer of Deployment Solutions at Syneos Health. We're talking about what's really happening in the field right now and what commercial leaders can do when visibility is limited and the pressure to move faster keeps rising. Talk to me, Deanne. What's keeping field force leaders up at night right now?
Yeah, it's really tough out there, right? So we want to make sure our sales representatives are doing a great job, but it's really hard to know if they're really doing a great job. Our managers only have limited time and limited opportunities to see how their representatives are doing. They can't be out with them every single day. So it's very tough to know how much of an impact they're having on every single field visit.
Yeah, it's really interesting, isn't it? That dilemma about not knowing, hoping. And as someone once said to me, it was the most crushing thing they ever told me, was, David, hoping isn't a strategy. So yeah, that's a lot of the backdrop behind what we've been trying to do at CCO, which is to try and increase that visibility.
That's where a little bit of the paradigm shift is happening that we're seeing more today. We're moving from traditional metrics of, okay, how many calls have you done? Give us some quantitative numbers, but really focusing more on the quality of the calls and the quality of the interactions, much more so because that has a broader impact than just the quantity. And from your perspective, how are teams being measured today? Where are the activity metrics falling short in showing a real impact?
Yeah, you're so right. When I was a district sales manager, I'd be looking at their activity report and seeing how many calls that they were making each week and wanting to make sure that they didn't land up on the red report, that they were at least making the calls. But how did I know if they were making any impact and the quality of the call? So it was always a guessing game. And like David just said, hope is not a strategy, but also it's like you're just hoping that they're delivering the messages that you spent so much money and time and energy developing. It's a guess. So any way that we can try to take that guess away is an opportunity for success, definitely.
It's a great point, Deanne. I think it's almost like a pharma disease, which is the signal delay. I always say to people, how long do you have to wait until you really know whether things are going right or wrong in the field? So there's this delay in the time to know. And then you've got the second delay in pharma, which is the delay in the time to act. And that could be 6-9 months. And in some kind of launch scenario where you've built a great strategy and you've done all the right things, but no contact ever survives first contact with the enemy or even the customer. And you're back to this hoping strategy. And so trying to get more frequent signal is absolutely key. And then changing our processes, as I know you do, Deanne, in terms of acting upon that in a faster, quicker way is how you then course correct and stay on track.
So how do we get a faster signal? Speed of insight, speed of execution is really the differentiating factor between success and failure in today's marketplace. So how do we improve that time to act piece?
I like to think about it as elite athletes. Imagine if we could do a game tape analysis of every single interaction that a field member has, and that they could then review their own game tape and actually go, oh, if only I'd asked this question, all that kind of stuff that you can do when you reflect and you look at your own game tape. I could start to see patterns across my interactions where I've got strengths and maybe where I've got some work on areas. And even better than that, I can talk to my manager. We can start to look at more representative views of what's going on in the field and then pick one or two things that we can work on. That's really, I think the key is more frequent observation and using AI to help us do that.
Yeah. And what Dave was just saying too, it's adding more dimensions to the call, if you would, and recording the call. Right now, what you were just talking about before is the representatives would make the call. They go back and they record that they made the call in their CRM, which is basically just saying, I checked a drop-down box to say, I did this message to this doctor on this day of the call. But that's all. And that's all they have. Now they actually have the call itself, and they can actually listen to it, see it, analyze it, and understand and get sentiment from what the call and what the impact that call had, which is way more dimensional, way more informative than anything that they had before.
Amazing. And by the way, just so everybody is clear, David, if I'm understanding this correctly, you're telling me I'm an elite athlete as long as I use AI. Is that accurate? I've moved into the elite athlete category.
Exactly. And we've got a ton of those elite athletes already in our Pharma field force. With that growth mindset of reviewing that game tape, you just get better and better.
Awesome. Okay. I want to talk about that a little bit more because it's interesting with AI in particular. We hear AI everywhere, but we talk about supercharging things. A lot of people are scared with AI, right? But what I'm hearing on this call is a little bit different. It's almost like saying, look, we want to take the human element, keep it, right? Allow that human interaction to focus on truly that one-to-one connection, developing that relationship, and using AI to supercharge and do some of the things that we don't want the human to lose focus of in the background. Is that accurate?
Yeah, absolutely. It's almost an irony that we're using AI to help humans become more human and therefore engage better with healthcare professionals. Because ultimately, what do we all want to do? What does every field team member want to do? They just want to show up with their best self and offer the best experience to the healthcare professional. And if we can keep making those marginal gains, those small tweaks, we're just going to do a better job and use that valuable healthcare professional time to its best effect.
Tell me a little bit more about Kai and how you guys are able to supplement with the nitty-gritty on that aspect.
It's very similar to what actually healthcare professionals are doing themselves. Is ambient listening. Most of the field interactions are in person, although we also listen to virtual calls as well. But those physicians, they're using that ambient listening to help them take notes so they can focus on the patient. And that's exactly what we're doing. We're listening, we're enabling our field team members to make sure that they don't miss a key action that maybe was agreed to, that they didn't write down at the time, so they can focus on that interaction with a healthcare professional. We're really getting into a value-added dialogue where the whole team knows what happened and therefore you can really build on it. So we're helping people prepare for their next meeting through those interaction notes that we've captured. And we're even starting to drive maybe even a joined up omni-channel journey, because if I know what we said last time, we've now got some relevant information that we might be able to use to drive a truly relevant next best action, rather than, again, one that we maybe have guessed at because we've got some profiling data, but we don't know about that individual physician.
Okay, so David, help me remove the ick. If I'm thinking to myself, I'm like, oh God, it's Big Brother. How many of these physicians are actually opting in and okay with this? And should people be okay with this type of technology and moving into that next era?
On a human level, people generally want to help other human beings. And so on that human level, people say yes. And then from a stats point of view, we find 80% of healthcare professionals are pretty comfortable. The only reason they're not going to do it, some people are just privacy. I don't want anything recorded. Yeah, that's fine. This is about empowering frontline staff. If you give them the tools like these elite athletes and go, hey, did you notice that? And they decide what they want to work on that they think is going to make the biggest difference. And that's how you get the best learning and development. People choosing the things that they want to work on are the things then that stick. Whereas if the machine's telling me I might want to do something different, one, I could ignore it if I don't agree with it. But two, we just have this machine bias. In my own private world, I could acknowledge that without having to admit it to another human being. So yeah, there's a lot of psychology in there.
And Michael, sales representatives by nature are very competitive, right? So those that are using this and are getting better and are beating the other ones, they're going to all start catching on and they're going to want to use it. It's how do you get better at doing your job that makes it exciting and wanting to be a part of it.
It's almost reframing it to, hey, this is a supplemental tool you can use to better serve your clients, better hit your goals, or make our message resonate more so than would have in the past. Talk to me a little bit more about the execution on the pharma side. When we talk about legal and compliance reviews and medical, I mean, I can barely get a now approved logo through a medical and legal review these days. We're talking about much more intense compliance things. So talk to me about that process. How are we seeing that work? What challenges have we run into?
Everything with AI right now is a hot topic within pharma. So this all starts with legal and compliance, as you're just mentioning, which actually is a great thing because they are actually very excited about this because you can imagine now they have a way in which we can track compliance with the sales representatives, which is a big hot button for them. So they actually are welcoming this opportunity, but we do have to talk to them first before we roll this out. So it has to get into all of our MSAs with data and privacy in there. So we do make sure that we cover off with them up front, that this gets in there. Sales representatives have to go through training. Everything, as we know, it has to be on message with them. So that is a big part that we have to go through with everything that we do. But it is no different than anything else that we do with our sales force within pharma.
And just building on that, Deanne, we do a lot of work on that in terms of we're using AI ethically. One of the things that we're doing to help people is we make suggestions on how to improve their last call, but we do that based off the medically signed off materials. So we're actually constraining ourselves to only reinforce what's already been trained. And that's, I think, a key component, which is why the compliance people love it.
Are we at a point yet, and I'm thinking back to sales rep days, where the sales rep can actually provide input and say, I would love if I get some kind of gentle reminder or some kind of notification to, again, help me be better. Are we at a level where we can then interact with the AI tool?
Yeah, if you're looking at our roadmap and some of our next releases is absolutely for us to fine tune the output so that if I want to work on my opening or my close or the way that I'm explaining the efficacy message, I can choose that and then get served that up time and time until I meet that goal. And then I go, right, now I'm going to work on the next part that I want to work on.
So Dave and Deanne, what are the questions that leaders are not asking today? They're not talking about. There's a lot of AI noise in the market, and it's really hard to be able to differentiate and think through the challenges and who should we work with, or who should we not work with, or what technology makes sense for us or not. But what are we not talking about that we really should be?
People are very concerned that AI is going to replace them. And I think we still need to talk to them about it's not going to replace you, it's going to make you better. But we do not explain what we mean by that. And the question we have to keep asking is, what are the inputs into the AI that makes you better? I think that's where David was just going with this last comment about how can I make my opening statement better? So it's what questions do we need to constantly be asking AI to make us better?
I'm going to answer it differently to Deanne, just to change it up. But I think in pharma, I think everyone sits there and they've got a dashboard and it's green. And everyone feels very comfortable that they've got a green dashboard. And what they're not really asking them is, how long does it take for something going on in the field to show up on that dashboard so I notice? So that signal delay that we talked about earlier. And then the second thing is, what is the impact? That's where we started this thing. What is the impact of what I'm actually doing? So I might be green on activity, but is it having the effect I need? So it's really about, in pharma field teams, we're trying to get to behavior change. Actually, how can we get to behavior change in a more effective way? And that's one of the questions that we asked ourselves. So we started to work with clinical psychologists to say, how do people really change behavior in a call? If we can understand how well we're connecting with healthcare professionals, it's the gateway to behavior change, because connection builds trust, builds openness, builds the ability to influence. And so by measuring connection with a framework we call Net Connector, we've got a gateway predictive measure of whether we're going to achieve behavior change. And that connection thing is what sales reps and MSLs relate to, because they know that that's their goal, their hidden goal. They might get asked, did you deliver that efficacy message? And the reality is you can have the best data, the best medicine in the world, but you won't get listened to. That'll fall on deaf ears unless you've got to that connection.
That's honestly how you take a rep or anyone from good to great. They become a better listener. They understand more. They've developed that relationship up front. So, Dan, you probably see that all day long in the teams that you deal with at the end of the day.
100%. And like you just said, if they're just showing up and dropping off a sample or dropping off literature, but they're not really a good listener and they're not taking it to the next level, they're not going to have what David just said, that impact. They're really not going to move the needle at all. And in today's framework that we're doing, there's very few products anymore that are not in a competitive environment. And if you can't break through that noise and be able to have that influence, if you would, or that behavioral change, you're not going to have impact anymore. You're just not. Most of the products that we're selling today, and in the world of, Michael, you've worked with me on this project with the biosimilars. Wow, that space, you have to be showing up to make an impact. And in the environment where managed care is a huge dynamic for most of our healthcare professionals, where coming back from COVID, they don't have the office staff that they used to have, and where primary care physicians are specialists now. So the whole environment has changed. And when representatives are there, they can't possibly remember everything that happened on that call and understanding what really resonated with their healthcare professional on that call. And so by having a tool like Kai and be able to go back after the call and be like, okay, what went well? What didn't go well? What stuck? What didn't stick? And hearing that kind of thing is really what's going to resonate and make a difference on the next call and so on. So we do know that it is time to act is what's going to make a difference. Where we used to say it would take 5 to 6 calls or 7 calls to make a difference, we don't have that luxury anymore. We got to be making an impact faster. We got to have that faster.
You asked about questions that people ask or don't ask. Here's a question that people do ask. They go, is it the singer or the song? And there's this interesting debate between, is it the field team that are delivering the messages in the right way / or the wrong way, or missing some of the messages out? Or is it the prop itself? Is it the message that's the problem? And I think everyone asks that question, but no one knows the answer. And so you always get this kind of back and forth tension in commercial organizations. And I think one of the things I know that Syneos really focuses on is precision. So that is a question that people ask, but they don't know the answer to unless they're using some of these precision tools that people like Syneos use.
Yeah, helping us get a little bit closer to what that actually should look like and where the challenges are and how to supplement. David, closing question for you really is, you talked about mindset, and for commercial leader planning a 2027 budget right now, what fixed mindset do they need to leave behind to stay competitive?
Well, that is a good question. We worked with a team that actually they thought they were going to get fired. So they were heavily motivated, and they'd been flat on sales for 3 years. So they were open to do something new, including using AI observation. Anyway, we analysed the conversations. We found there were 3 things probably when you really looked at it, they could do really differently that could change up the conversation dynamic. But what they actually did was they changed their whole performance management system. And of course, not everyone was doing it. To start with, that's not the way change happens. But they're able to then go, come on, we need to do more encouraging people. Do you need more help? Do you need more briefings? And actually, over a 3-month period, they lifted their sales 300%. Through implementing these 3 key levers that they changed fundamentally how they were handling their conversations. So you've got to change the process because you've got these faster inputs. AI is helping us go faster, but only if you change your management process. So I think that's probably the fixed mindset thing that you've got to change is use AI, use its power, use the frequency of observation to really drive performance in a much faster way. If you do that, it starts to compound, especially when you're doing it at launch.
Huge. Yeah, change management is a crucial part of any implementation aspect that we often set to the back of our mind and don't really think about actively. But that aspect of it really is the first step in any of these pieces. Thanks for the conversation, Deanne and David. I'm Michael Sarshad, one of the hosts of the Syneos Health podcast, Conversations on Commercialization. If you're listening and leading a commercial team, I hope this gave you a clear way to think about visibility, coaching, and faster learning loops. Until next time.
That's it for this episode of the Syneos Health podcast, Conversations on Commercialization. Subscribe wherever you get your podcasts so you never miss an episode. If there's a topic you'd like us to explore, send us a message at podcast@syneoshealth.com. For more actionable, future-focused life science insights, visit the Insights Hub at syneoshealth.com.